My name is Tiffany, and one of the most important things life has taught me is that you've got to show up for yourself.
Hi, my name is Tiffany, and welcome to Present for Myself. I want to talk to you about radical self-care. Let's get right into it. So radical is the term that's operative here because a lot of us already know about self-care. Self-care comes in many forms. It can be something as simple as getting a weekly manicure, and it can also be something like getting your doctor's appointments in, your dental appointments in, your eye appointments in, making sure that you're taking care of your overall health and well-being. Vacations, getaways, retreats, that walk in the park or that walk in the mountains, all of that self-care, taking in things that keep you balanced and stable and well. But the operative word today is radical self-care. Radical at its source, etymology, when you look at the etymology of the word, it means root. It means getting to the root and to the source of something, digging that thing up from the root and at the source. So when you put radical and self-care together, what we're talking about is taking self-care to a level where we get deeper. And see, in those deep places, it's not always pretty. In those deep places, it doesn't always smell like aromatherapy. In those deep places, that's where we encounter the toxic things many times. That's where we do the deep root work, the dark work, the shadow work, if you will. And in those moments, that's when we see probably one of the reasons why many of us go to the forms of certain topical self-care more than we actually probably need to, when what we really need to do is the deeper work. Take someone who treats themselves to a shopping spree as a means of self-care, rewarding themselves for something. When they get over into a place of shopping as a form of therapy and over shopping and extending themselves, what's really going on there? Take a person who takes lots of vacations and breaks and, they take lots of naps and they get away a lot. And sometimes, if not properly checked, that can get over into escapism. So we're not really into self-care then. We're escaping something. We're running away from something as opposed to processing things and knowing what we need to maintain balance. So when we talk about radical self-care, we're talking about hitting those things at the root. And the types of self-care that I want to talk to you about today are more relationship oriented, but there's other things. As we go on with this channel, you'll hear me explore radical self-care a lot. It's actually the root of this whole channel. Being present for yourself means many times telling other people no. It means refraining from activities that sometimes people think traditionally you're supposed to be a part of and all of that. So that's the root of this channel. Radical self-care. Around this season, because right now, if you're watching this video, no matter what time of year it is, we're around the holiday season, the traditional American and world holiday seasons. And so when we talk about monitoring relationships, a lot of times people think that means, a dating relationship or what have you. But I'm talking about every relationship, your relationship with your spouse, your relationship with your boyfriend or girlfriend or lover or what have you, your relationship with your children, your relationship with your family and your parents. Ooh, that's where it gets real deep when we talk about radical self-care. This time of year, we are bombarded with images where people are gathering in their homes and they're traveling across the country and across the world to be with family. And a lot of times we see these warm and fuzzy commercials that guy's coming home from college and they're sitting around the fireplace and they're, roasting marshmallows and they're eating grandma's souffle and puddings and collard greens and all these kinds of things. And it just seems so warm and beautiful. And for a person who's estranged from their family, it can seem and it's overwhelming emotionally. Or maybe someone who has lost someone over the last year or a few years and they're still grieving. And so those types of images, they're traditional images that are put into our minds and we're made to think this is what is normal. This is what is supposed to be. Why do we think that? Because it's what society tells us. How does it affect us mentally? Well, for those of us who have had to push away from or pull away from certain types of relationships, it can be devastating if we make that a normal thing, if we normalize it, if we take the blood is thicker than water route, which if you really research that, it's actually, we use it incorrectly many times. It comes from a religious scripture. I won't get into all of that. That talks about blood, the blood of the covenant being deeper or thicker than the blood that's in the womb or the water that's in the womb. If you really do your research on that, what it's basically saying is the covenants and the friendships that we make with other people are actually thicker than those things that come with familial ties. But we use it to be opposite. Blood is thicker than water. You know, my relationship with my cousin, even though she's abusive to me, is thicker than my relationship with my best friend who's offered me the opportunity to travel with her this holiday season. So I still got to go home and hang around with my family who treat me just any kind of way, even though my best friend or even though my other friends, they celebrate instead of tolerate me. So radical self-care means that you have made a point, you have made it a practice to be around people who celebrate you instead of tolerate you, people who lift you up instead of abuse you, emotionally abuse you, physically abuse you, people who have abused you in the past, never said sorry, and you're still forced to hang out with them, people who you've been forced to deal with on a regular basis, all because that's family. And can I put a pin right here real quick because this just came into my mind? Stop making your children hug up on and love on people that they don't want to just because that's your uncle and that's their uncle and that's their cousin. Teach your children self-agency, even with family members. Teach them that they have a right to hug or allow themselves to be hugged by who they want to hug and who they want to allow themselves to be hugged by. Because you're creating a situation where they don't have autonomy over their own little bodies or over their own bodies, and you're setting them up to be in many ways taken advantage of in the future because they think just because it's a certain relationship, I have to be allow this person to perform an intimate, which a hug or a kiss even on the cheek is an intimate act upon me. I had to say that. Okay. So back to what I was saying about families. Families, familiar, that's where that word comes from. We have got to stop letting our relationships cause us to not practice radical self-care. The way that you practice radical self-care within the form of a family is that you assess your family situation and you ask yourself, do I need to keep going over there? Do I need to keep this relationship alive? Is this relationship triggering me? Is it causing me to fall into a state of depression on a regular basis? Do I dread being around my family? And I'm not talking about dread in the sense of, oh God, I got to be around my family again. My cousins who are always wanting to dance and go out and party and hang out and I just want to chill. No, I'm talking about going and being around family members who have committed atrocious acts upon you or done things to you, abusive, socially abusive, emotionally abusive, mentally abusive things, and they've never made amends. You've never had counseling. You've never worked that out. And yet you're expected to still sit around the table and break bread with them on a regular basis. And you allow yourself to be guilted by other family members to show up at functions where you know you're going to be at your very core uncomfortable and where you have to literally brace yourself for these types of relationships. Instead, choose to be around the people who celebrate you. Choose to be around the people who process things through with you, that respect you, that respect you, that respect you. Choose to be around those types of relationships. Radical self-care, taking care of yourself in a way that says, I'm important enough and I'm special enough to see about myself, even though you won't. Okay? Another form of self-care that I wanted to talk to you about today is organizational commitments that we have. Organizational commitments can be anything from a job, a church, your mosque, your temple, whatever it is that you serve or quote unquote worship or what have you. Organizational relationships, clubs, anything that you're a part of. You need to assess those types of relationships on a regular basis and practice radical self-care with those. Do you need to still remain in those environments? Now, listen, I'm trying to remind you here that I'm not talking about self-care where it pertains to going out and, like I said before, getting that manicure. All of those things are necessary and important, or going out and doing things that are more topical. I'm talking about do the work. Ask yourself, why am I here? Did I ever really want to be in this field or work in this particular job in the first place? Or did I just do it to placate my family or my friends or to look good? And now I'm miserable here. And now I'm subjecting myself to certain types of abuses and certain types of pressures that I don't need to be subjecting myself to on my job, in my club, in my church. Where is it that I draw the line and say enough is enough and it's time for me to make a move, to make a change, to go someplace where my gifts and my talents are being received and being rewarded on a regular basis, rather than being somewhere where I feel like I'm on a hamster wheel, where I'm being made to just go and go and go, and they don't care if my heart explodes as long as they get every bit of juice and every ounce of work out of me. Radical self-care says, let me do the work surrounding that. Let me get into some sort of a therapist situation or a coaching situation that shows me and teaches me and helps me to access parts of me that will allow me to break away from those things. Let me make the choices, the hard choices, and go into the places and the recesses that set me up to see why it is that I keep choosing this in the first place. So that's another form of self-care. Those relationships was number one, and also your organizational commitments. That's number two. Number three, monitoring the things like overall mental health and well-being. If those things aren't right within you, if you haven't gone and you haven't sought out therapy or counseling or talked through or processed through some form of work, some form of holistic work, some form of mental health work, some form of, just finding yourself work, you'll find yourself continually repeating those patterns. You'll find yourself listening more to society rather than to your inner self, listening more to society than to your own body speaking to you and tell you when you need to make changes. Mental health is important. It's important not just to go to a therapist whenever you're experiencing a crisis. It's good to have someone that's there that you can just talk things through with or just share with on a regular basis. How's it going? Someone checking in on you and holding you accountable. And those types of people, those types of entities, someone, a coach, a therapist, someone who is trained in the field of either, as far as therapy goes, helping you with your mental health, as far as coaching goes, someone who can be in your corner, rooting for you and holding you accountable for the things that you have decided after processing your emotions and your feelings and your thoughts that you now want to do, that you want to attempt, those types of things. And then lastly, the thing, and again, this is not an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination, your social health. Know who you are as an individual. Are you introverted? Are you extroverted? Are you an empath? All of these are catch-all terms that we hear a lot, but these terms do make a difference in how you socialize yourself. If you're an introvert and you have all extroverted friends, you're going to feel a lot of pressure a lot of times to do things that you don't necessarily want to do. It's going to make you feel weird and abnormal because they're always wanting to get out. That's where they draw their energy from. An extroverted person draws their energy from being around a lot of people and, getting out there and networking and all of that. Whereas an introverted person, they don't draw their energy from the same source. So you're going to find yourself in situations where you're possibly being pressured to do things that you don't want, and you're going to be always exhausted, and you're going to be tired, and you're not going to know why, and you're going to be down on yourself, not understanding that, hey, wait a minute, I'm an introvert. I like to go out from time to time, but I'm not really invested in all the small talk and the networking as much. And I find my recharging comes from reading a good book or watching a good movie and sitting in on a Saturday from time to time and just curling up and just, or having a conversation one-on-one with someone who I really value. And the same with a person who may have friends who are introverted. You're going to find yourself possibly bored and frustrated because you want to get out and about. It doesn't mean you can't have make friends with people who are different than you. It just means you need to understand who you are, because you don't want to be made to feel abnormal or bad about the person you are, just innately who you are as an individual. And you don't want to force yourself to try to be a way that you're not. Radical self-care says, I know who I am. I know what it is. I know my parameters. I know my boundaries. I know when to tell you, stop. That's enough. Don't come any further. I know when to say, I need you to come in a little closer. I need a little bit more from you. I know my boundaries. I know my parameters. I know my limitations when it comes to what keeps me in a place of balance, what keeps me whole, what keeps me healthy. And I'll put some information in the description box for you, some resources that you can look into to help you find a therapist. I'll even put some sliding scale information to help you find a therapist if possibly finances are an issue for you, because I want you to win. I want you to win. Radical self-care. I want to wish you all the best and the happiest ending to this particular year that we are in. I don't want to make this thing too seasonal because I know this video will be viewed year round, but just know this, I am rooting for you. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you are getting valuable information, and share it. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with the people that you know will benefit from it. My very best to you.
Sometimes when we don't know the words we hum,